I'm going to start by showing you a little bit about Photoshop, the actual app, in order to create what we call a radial design or a kaleidoscope. So Photoshop, the app, is the large P with the small s, and you can see I have a couple of my projects already started from some former kaleidoscope tutorials that I was trying to do. So I'm just going to delete those right there. And I'm going to create a new document right here on the very bottom. Now I'm going to go to a specific size piece of paper that I'm going to build my kaleidoscope on. So I'm going to choose print up at the top, and I'm going to choose the second one, which is letter, an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and I'm going to hit create. So this creates a blank sheet of paper for us. On the right hand side, on the left-hand side, you see our tools that we are going to be using. And then on the right-hand side, you see what are called layer properties. So the first thing I want to do in order to create my kaleidoscope is I want to introduce a photo into my kaleidoscope. So I'm going to choose image on the left-hand side, right underneath the letter T, and I'm going to choose photo. It's going to open up to my photos. I told you to take, some landscape photos, some nature shots. Really anything could be used for this. So, hey, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this fence picture with some leaves showing up right here. So this particular picture is what I'm going to use for my kaleidoscope. So when I introduce my image into this, what happens is that we are in the transform mode. If I grab a hold of one of these corners, I can make my image smaller so that I can start to build my design. If I grab a hold of one of the circles on the right or on the top or the bottom, it will kind of skew my image a little bit, but I want to just make it smaller on the page. So at this point, I am going to choose done. Do not choose the little bar at the bottom. That will rotate your image, and you don't want to rotate your image at this point. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I want to delete that blank layer that I have. So notice I have two layers now, the image layer and then the blank layer. I'm going to select the blank layer, and at the three dots at the very bottom, I am then going to choose to delete that layer. It's a big mistake if you accidentally merge your layer to the blank piece of paper. So I'm just going to get rid of the blank piece of paper. And the next thing I'm going to do with this image layer highlighted is I'm going to select the three dots again, and I am going to go to duplicate that layer. If I choose the top tool on the right hand side, I can now move that image off to the side. But what I want to do is I want to make that image a mirror image of it. So I'm going to go to the second tool on the left-hand side. That is our transforming tool. I don't want to make it bigger or smaller. What I want to do is next to done up at the top of the screen, I want to either flip it vertically or I want to flip it horizontally. Then choose done. And now what you want to do is you want to zoom in on your image. All right, we're zooming in on it enough that we can now grab a hold of one side and literally piece our image together. Okay, the goal is that your edge is supposed to be nice and even like this one is right here, and that there is no white seam showing up within your design. Once you've achieved that, and it makes it a lot easier to piece it together if you're zoomed in on it way close. So if I zoom in on it even more here, then when I piece it together, it's very easy to slide it together to get that symmetrical design. Okay, a little tricky. Sometimes it moves at the end, but there you go. It looks pretty good. And now I'm going to the three dots at the bottom, and I'm going to go all the way at the bottom of that panel, and I'm going to merge down. Notice what happened on our layers is now I have this as one tile. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to again duplicate this section. I am going to flip this section by going to my transform tool. Now what happened here? All right, and I'm going to choose done here because what happened is that Photoshop kind of added this white piece of paper here, or this white little thing that's kind of messing up my design. So if that happens, if you go to your transform tool and the box, see how the box is not around just my image? Well, it means that Photoshop unfortunately picked up what we call an artifact, all right? So what I am going to do is I'm going to delete that little piece right there. See how it's stuck to my image? No big deal. I'm going to go to my eraser, and I'm just simply going to erase that little white box right there, okay? I don't know why it happens. I wish I could tell you how it happens and why it happens, but now when I click on that top layer, or I click on the bottom layer, that white little box should not be attached there when I move my image around, all right? So now I'm going to go to one of the layers. I'm going to go to my transform tool. Let's see, it picked up, there's another little white piece of paper. So again, that shouldn't be there. So if your transform tool is not around just the image, what you want to go is find that little white box. Why it's happening, I don't know. I've done this tutorial about 1,000,000 times to figure it out, but I haven't figured it out. So I'm just erasing the white box and then going back to transform, and boom, it's perfect where I need it to be. Okay, so I hope you can understand what's happening there. So I'm gonna hit done. I'm gonna go again back to my transform tool. I'm now gonna flip it the other direction. And so now you can see that I have this mirrored image of this selection. I'm going to zoom in on it. I'm going to piece it together. Get rid of no seam is showing up. The edge is nice. And I'm going to go now and click the 3 dots. I am going to merge down. And now I have this one completed tile for my design. At this point, I want to have 4 of these on my page. So what I'm going to do, you guessed it, I'm going to duplicate it, but there's no more flipping involved. So I'm just moving it into position. Oop, just rotated that a bit. So I'm going to move this with my 2 fingers, get that into position right there. And I can zoom in on it even more. Piece that together. Again, the more you zoom in on it, the easier it is to piece together. I'm going to go to the 3 dots. I'm going to merge down. You should never have more than 2 layers at a time. Did everybody hear that? No more than 2 layers on my layer panel at a time. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer. I am going to move it into position, and you got it. I'm going to zoom in on that middle seam, how crazy it is. I'm going to move that into position. And I'm going to merge down. So now this is one giant design. Now my design is going off the page a little bit. So I'm going to go to that tool. I'm going to move these in so I can fill out my page here. Sometimes, this gets a little glitchy at this point because if you have a lot of apps on your iPad and all that kind of stuff, you might not have a lot of room to do some Photoshop stuff, all right? So at this point, my design is a full page, pretty cool looking. I could stop right there, but I'm going to show you how to make this next level. I am going to duplicate this layer. I am going to transform this layer, and now this time I'm going to go to the 3 dots on the bottom left-hand side, because right now I want to type in 90 degrees. All right, I'm going to click off on my screen there. I'm going to grab a hold of one of these corners. All right, so I'm done there. I'm going to grab a hold of the top, drag that up. I'm going to drag this in so that, again, it's filling my page here. I'm going to drag this one down to the bottom. So right now I have the same design, just rotated, filling the page. At this point, notice on my layers right now, I have this top one, which is just showing my 2 layers. This one, which is just showing me a little bit of an expanded layers. But layer properties is what I want to get to, because right here where it says blend mode, if I click on normal, and now I go through and click on these different blending modes, it'll give me a totally different effect for my image. Some of it lightens, some of the whites knock out, some of the blacks knock out, some of the colors will combine. Overlay is kind of a nice 50-50 of your image, but this is really like the true kaleidoscope that we want to get at. Once you pick a blending option that you enjoy and that you think looks good, you can of course play around with your opacity as well at this point. That's your opacity of the upper layer, the top layer. I usually leave it at 100. And once you get it to this point, we're pretty much done and we're able to save it. I am going to go to my save little button, top, the box with the arrow popping out of it. And there I got it ready to go to publish. I'm going to go to JPEG and keep it as a JPEG. I'm going to export to my camera roll. And now what I can do is I can go ahead and save my image to my camera roll so that you can post this to Schoology. I'm thinking that I'm going to have you do 2 of these different kaleidoscopes using 2 different images just to see what kind of effects you can get from this. And remember, a lot of designers, clothing designers, wallpaper designers, interior designers, they all use this idea of creating a radial design to create patterns, and again, eye-pleasing patterns. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and make sure you watch it wisely so that you can create your kaleidoscope as well.